Hello everyone, good morning. Before going to start my today's lecture, first of all, I would like to introduce myself to all of you. I am Locomotion, lecturer of biology, Milestone College. Welcome you all to my today's online class. Hope you all are quite okay and fine. In the last class, I discussed about structure and functions of bone. Today, I am going to discuss about another important topics, that is structure and functions of muscular tissue. And muscle can pull but cannot push. These are the two topics which will be discussed here today. First of all, I would like to discuss about the structure and function of muscular tissue, and after completing this topic, then I will discuss about the muscle can pull but cannot push. But learning objectives of my today's lecture. After completing my today's lecture, a student would able to know about, or you can easily define the muscle tissue, muscle fiber, sarcolemma, sarcoplasm, myofibril, fasciculus, epimysium, perimysium, flexor and extensor muscle. You can also explain the types of muscular tissue. You can also explain the structure and functions of different types of muscular tissue, comparison among three types of muscular tissue. Muscle can pull and cannot push. You can also explain it. Before going to start the structure and function of muscular tissue, you have to know about what is muscular tissue. The tissue, which consists of fiber-like numerous highly specialized cells for constriction, relaxation and responsible for movement of the whole body or a portion of it, is called the muscular tissue. If you look at the definition, you can see that the muscle tissue is actually consisting of some fiber-like muscle cell which have the high power of constriction and relaxation ability, and this muscular tissue is actually responsible for movement of the whole body or a portion of a body. Now let's discuss about the characteristic feature of muscular tissue. Muscular tissue have some important characteristic features. Some of the most important characteristic features of the muscular tissue will be discussed here today. The muscular tissue is originated from the mesodermal germ layer. As you know that there are three embryonic layers in the embryo in triploblastic animal. These are ectodermal layer, mesodermal layer and endodermal layer. Muscular tissue is actually originated from the mesodermal germ layer of the triploblastic animal. Muscle cell or muscle tissue is formed during the embryonic development through a process known as myogenesis. Myogenesis is a terminology. What is myogenesis? Myo means muscle and genesis means synthesis. So myogenesis means the synthesis of the muscle, or the process of development of the muscle is called the myogenesis. The cells of the muscle tissue are narrow, elongated, fiber-like, and have the high power of constriction and relaxation power. Amount of matrix is very low. Muscle cells are called fibers or muscle fibers. Muscle cells are called fibers because muscle cells look like fiber-like structure. That's why the muscle cells are called the fiber or muscle fiber. Cytoplasm of the muscle cell is called sarcoplasm, and their cell membrane is referred to as a sarcolemma. In a typical animal cell, the cell is surrounded by a double layer membrane which is called the plasma membrane, plasma lemma or cell membrane. But in case of muscle cell, the cell membrane is called the sarcolemma, and the cytoplasm of the muscle cell is called the sarcoplasm. Sarcoplasm of the muscle cells also bear some parallelly arranged numerous myofibril protein fiber. So these are the main characteristic features of muscular tissue. Now the muscular system. Muscles can be voluntary and involuntary. Voluntary, in case of voluntary you can control their movement, but in case of involuntary you cannot control their movement. Types of muscular tissue. On the basis of structural, functional and locational difference, the muscular tissue are of mainly three types: skeletal or striated muscle, cardiac muscle, smooth muscle. Now let's discuss about skeletal muscle in detail. The term Muscles refer to a number of muscle fibers bound together by connective tissue. Bones provides place for the attachment of the skeletal muscle and maintain the optimum length of the resting muscle. The skeletal muscle always begin and end in the bone, and they touch one another, and they never begin and end on the same bone. Look at the figure very minutely. This is the very important figure. First of all, I would like to discuss about the mesodermal origin. Actually, muscles are originated from the mesodermal germ layer of the embryonic development. During the embryonic development, as have already discussed it earlier, and myoblast is the embryonic germ layer from which a mature myocyte is formed, and sarcolemma is the cell membrane of the muscle cell, and sarcoplasm is the cytoplasm of the muscle cell. And in the cytoplasm of the muscle cell, some sarcoplasmic reticulum and transverse tubules are also found. Some important characteristic features of the skeletal muscle: electrical excitability, contractility, extensibility, and elasticity. And this is the another very important figure, and you look at the figure very carefully. Actually, the muscle fiber or muscle cell contain some parallelly arranged myofibril filaments, and this myofibril filaments and again contain some myofilament. Myofilaments actually consisting of two types of protein filaments, actin and myosin protein. Actins are very thick and myosin are very thin filament, and muscle fiber are normally arranged in a bundle to form a fasciculus, which is surrounded by a perimysium covering of connective tissue. Some of the fasciculus are again bounded together by epimysium covering of connective tissue to form a bigger bundle. Thus, the skeletal muscle exists in the body as numerous bundle. Now, these are some important terminology have been discussed here today. Now, each skeletal muscle has 100 to 1000 muscle fiber. Cells are cylindrical. Fibers 10 to 100 micrometer diameter, 10 centimeter length. Fiber contains several nucleus just below membrane, lie parallel to each other. Sarcoplasm bundle of myofibril 2 micrometer diameter, contain myofilament, contractile protein. Two types of proteins, actin and myosin, are present in the myofilaments of the muscle fiber. Now let's discuss about the cardiac muscle in details. Cardiac muscle is a highly specialized tissue restricted to the wall of the heart. It is also an involuntary type of muscle, as its contraction is not consciously controlled. As you know that the heart is not consciously controlled, so we can say that the cardiac muscle is a involuntary type of muscle. The distribution: the cardiac muscle constitutes only the middle myocardial layer of the heart wall. Now the structure of the cardiac muscle. Cardiac muscles have some of the important characteristics or features. Some of the important feature or characteristics of the cardiac muscle will be discussed here today. Cardiac muscle tissue contain short, branched, striated cells with one nucleus at the center of each cell. The sarcolemma of the cardiac muscle is very thin. Each cell has many myofibril which lie parallel to one another in the direction of the long axis of the cell. Myofibril are striated. Cardiac muscle cells are joined together to neighboring cell by intercalated disc. So the intercalated disc is the unique and very important feature of the cardiac muscle. Now the functions of the cardiac muscle. Cardiac muscles tissue plays a very important role in the contraction of the atria and the ventricles of the heart. It causes the rhythmic beating of the heart, circulating the blood throughout the body. Now let's discuss about in details smooth muscles or visceral muscle. Smooth muscles that contract without conscious control, having the form of the layer or sheet made up of spindle-shaped unstretched cell, is called the smooth muscle. Now the distribution of the smooth muscle. Smooth muscle is abundant throughout the internal organs such as the stomach, intestine, bladder and the blood vessel. Now the structure of the smooth muscle or visceral muscle. Smooth muscles tissue is made up of thin elongated muscle cells fiber. These fibers are spindle shaped, jointed at their end, and each has a single large and oval nucleus. Look at the figure very minutely. If you see the figure, you can easily understand the structure of the visceral muscle. Each cells or fiber is filled with a specialized cytoplasm, the sarcoplasm, and is surrounded by a thin membrane, the sarcolemma. Each cell has many myofibril which lie parallel to one another in the direction of the long axis of the cell. No striations are found in smooth muscle. That's why the smooth muscle is sometimes called unstriated muscle. Smooth muscle or visceral muscle. Now the functions of the smooth muscle or visceral muscle. Smooth muscle controls slow involuntary movement as the contraction of the smooth muscle tissue in the wall of the stomach and intestine. The smooth muscle of the arteries contract and relax to regulate the blood pressure and the flow of blood. Now, this is the very important topics which should be discussed here today. The comparison among skeletal muscle, smooth muscle or visceral muscle, and cardiac muscle. Now let's discuss about the comparative study of these three kinds of muscle. The distribution. The skeletal muscle is mainly attached to the skeleton, but skeletal muscle also found in the eye, tongue and the pharynx. Visceral muscle or smooth muscle are found in the alimentary canal, blood vessel, urinary tract, etc. Cardiac muscle is only found in the myocardial layer of the heart wall. The nature of the skeletal muscle is voluntary. Voluntary means you can easily control this type of muscle. That's why this is called the voluntary type of muscle, or skeletal muscle is called the voluntary type of muscle. But visceral muscle is not consciously controlled. That's why visceral muscle is called the involuntary type of muscle. And cardiac muscle is also not consciously controlled. That's why cardiac muscle is also called the involuntary type of muscle. Muscle tissue, muscle fiber. Now, the shape or structure of the skeletal muscle. The skeletal muscle fibers are tubular in shape and unbranched, and visceral muscle cells are spindle shaped and unbranched, and cardiac muscle is tubular in shape and branched. Now, as the muscle cell is a cell, so it contains nucleus. But in case of skeletal muscle, the nucleus is numerous, and nucleus is located at the periphery of the nucleus, periphery of the cell. And the visceral muscle, in case of visceral muscle, the number of nucleus in a single visceral muscle cell is single, and it is located at the center of the cell. In case of cardiac muscle, the number of cell is single and it is located at the center of the cell. Intercalated disc. Intercalated disc is absent in skeletal muscle. Intercalated disc is also absent in visceral muscle, but intercalated disc is only present in the cardiac muscle. Intercalated disc is one of the most important characteristic feature or unique feature of the cardiac muscle, and this specialized characteristics is only found in the cardiac muscle but not in smooth or skeletal muscle. Constriction power. The constriction power of skeletal muscle is very rapid and powerful, and constriction power of visceral muscle is very slow and long. constriction power of cardiac muscle is limited and rhythmic. The functions of the skeletal muscle. Skeletal muscles is actually responsible for the movement of organs. The visceral muscle is actually responsible for controlling the movement of substance within the canal, and cardiac muscle is responsible for heartbeat. Now, this is the very important topics. The muscle can pull but cannot push. To understand this topic very clearly, you have to know some of the important terminology. The antagonistic muscle. For every muscles or group of muscles that bring about movement of certain parts of the body, there is another muscle or group of muscle which bring about an opposite movement. Such muscle bringing about opposite movements is called the antagonistic muscle. They make the smooth coordination of movement possible. As one muscle contract, the other muscle relax, and vice versa. Flexor and extensor muscle. Now the flexor muscle. A muscle which bends and appendages at a joint, causing a limb to flex, is called the flexor muscle. Biceps is an example of flexor muscle. Extensor muscle. The antagonistic muscle straighten and extend the appendages. When it contracts is called the extensor muscle. The transverse muscles is an example of extensor muscle. Muscle can pull but cannot push. Example of muscle in partnership like these include the muscle that bend and straighten our arms. For instance, the biceps muscle in our upper arm pull out lower arm upward when it contracts. The tricep muscle at the back of the upper arm pull the lower arm down when contract. So to bend our arm, the biceps pull while the tricep relaxed, and to lower it again, the biceps relax and the triceps pull. You see the figure here, you can easily understand the mechanism of the muscle functions. A muscle such as biceps and triceps in arm work together to allow movement in different direction. So we can say that the muscle can pull but cannot push. Now the homework, comparison among the three types of muscular tissue. That's all about my today's lecture. I think today's lecture is very much important lecture for all of us. You all are requested to watch my video lectures for several times so that you can understand my today's lecture video very clearly. If you have any queries regarding my today's lecture, feel free to ask me. You can communicate with me for any time. I am always prepared to solve your problem. So thank you for your patient sharing. Thank you all.